It gives me great pleasure now to introduce our third speaker, the formidable Ankur Shiv Bhandari. Ankur comes from an industry background of marketing and business development. And for more than 20 years, he's been building value for prestigious clients across the world, exploring ways in particular that the intent of consumers and shoppers, might be harnessed through marketing and business development. His research into the subject draws on marketing, psychology, behavioral science, and law, and has had wide applications in personal, the private, and the public sectors as well. We're delighted that he forms such a vital part of our international business team here at St. Mary's, where he works now as a senior lecturer. Without further ado, I'll introduce Ankur and his talk. That wasn't my intention. It's a spotlight on human behavior. Ankur.
Thank you, Mark, for those kind words. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Mesal khair. Namaste. It is a pleasure to be here. And as Mark mentioned, the topic of the conversation today is the role of intent. So before I dive into my theory and the models and all of that, I would like for all of us to think of a scenario. So if you can please think of a big purchase that you might have made recently. So when I say a big purchase, I don't mean a house or a car, maybe something over $100 or £100 or equivalent value, which made you think a little bit before putting your card number on the online portal or making that payment. So think for a second, please, of a big purchase that you might have made recently. Okay? So whatever you've purchased, let us call that product A. So product A is what you've purchased. But as you were deciding of making that purchase, as I said, it hopefully is a purchase where you had to think about a little bit. You might have compared it to other products, and there might be a product which was the close second. So you did go for product A, but there was another product, so there might be quite a few, but there was another one which was quite close. Let us call that product B. Now, I would like to ask you all a very simple question. What made you go for product A versus product B? So there was a level of intent on both the products. You had given some consideration to both the products. But what made you convert that intent to action in the case of product A? Think about it. Okay? Well, you might have various thoughts. You might be saying that because the price was better, or because that is the latest craze in the market, or that is what your friends have, or that is the one which had a lot of wonderful reviews out there. So there could be many reasons why you chose this particular product A. But if I was to boil down all of those reasons into one single word, what do you think that might be? That word is relevance. You went for that product because whatever the proposition that the makers of product A had was more relevant to you. That was the one that appealed to you more strongly versus any other product, and especially in the case of product B. Now, if you are the owner of the company that makes product B, you would want to know how can they appeal or how they can be relevant to you so that their product is chosen over any other product. To be able to do that, what is very important for them is to understand what drives relevance. So I am here talking about this product, but I'll come to how this applies in other phases of our lives. So when we look at relevance, what is it that forms relevance? So, again, thinking about this owner of product B, he wants to understand how he can be more relevant to you. So how would he do that? So what informs relevance? The foundation on which relevance is built is belief. The beliefs that we have are informed by the way we are raised. They are informed by our environment. They are informed by our peer group, schools we go to, our workplaces. So there are, of course, very strong set of beliefs. So yes, this is something that does inform relevance. So the owner of product B potentially might be able to think, can I change something in the belief system so that I am more relevant? Now that is not as easy because beliefs are generally very, very strong. I am a Hindu. I cannot eat beef. So irrespective of if someone offers me the world's best steak, it has no relevance for me. So they cannot really influence my belief from that point of view. But there are certain beliefs that can be influenced. So belief is one component that informs relevance. There is another very important component, and that is our external environment. So we've heard, our two previous speakers talk about pandemic. Gemma's talk was absolutely brilliant, where she related the whole thing around pandemic to how it has influenced the way we think. So if we think about that over the past 1 year, there are a lot of things that have happened in our external environment which have made a difference to what feels relevant to us. So it might be that, we might not have liked having Zoom calls in the past. So they were not relevant to us, but they are part of our lives now. So, that is something that defines relevance. So again, coming to this gentleman owning product B, that is something that he can do. Maybe he can do something so that there is something in the external environment that informs this relevance. And how can he do that? Because all of us have multiple small children within us who associate with different things, maybe with ambition, maybe with sense of belonging. There are different things. So, this owner of product B can appeal to this so that, they can make their product more relevant. And this is something that then ultimately leads to intent. And the reason why you bought product A was because this relevance was so strong that it made your intent so powerful that it was able to be converted into action. Think of our kids. I have a 15-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. We, sort of think about this almost on a daily basis. What can we do so that our kids form strong intent, whether it is towards grades or whether it is to do well in their sports team or anything? The same principle applies to our students. When we teach our students, so I teach marketing. In marketing, if I'm just talking about theories without making it relevant to them in terms of how that applies to what they might do in their careers going forward or why it could be relevant to them, it will be very difficult for me to develop their intent and get them to do an action where they deliver amazing assignments. Same thing applies in organizations. So in my business, we work with a lot of multinational corporations. A big focus of these companies is how can they develop intent within their employees so that there are actions which help the organizations. If the organization only thinks about itself and is not thinking about how can they drive relevance, it will be very difficult to have a strong intent to ultimately get it converted into action. Political parties, we have seen a huge change in the UK, let us call it colors, red to blue or otherwise. How did that happen? Because a particular political party was able to be more relevant to the target audience, and that then ultimately helped them create more intent and more action. So there are multiple ways in which this happens. Let us look at some practical examples of how it is used in the industry. So in the world of sales, one of the key foundation principles in the world of sales is features versus benefits. So what is that? Let me use an example. So let us say a new electrical appliances company is launching a new electrical toaster in the market. So they come to you. So they first speak about the features. It has got the wires have triple protection. The body is made of anodized metal. Is that relevant to you? Maybe. Versus the company talks to you about benefits. This is a toaster which will give you the crunchiest toast ever. It will have the best nutrients retained when you have it. The taste will be outstanding. So what is it that will appeal to you more? I would hope it is the benefits that would appeal to you more. Why? Because again, looking at our BRIA model, so BRIA that we looked at, that is something that is more relevant to you. Let us look at the world of marketing. So the people from the world of marketing, excuse me, might be aware of this IDA model, which is awareness, interest, desire, action. So of course, my students, I speak about this quite a lot. So awareness, of course, is very important for any product or service that is being sort of, you're trying to build loyalty for that, or excuse me. So awareness is, of course, very important. But it is this interest. How do you generate interest? By being relevant. So that is why in the concepts of marketing, where you talk about segmentation, targeting, positioning, or other concepts of marketing, it is the relevance part which maps to the interest, which ultimately leads to desire or intent, and that leads to action, which is building brand loyalty or making the brand much stronger. Gemma, you might like this, the world of law, murder versus manslaughter. Intent plays a big role in the world of law as well. So big distinction, there are others as well, but the big distinction between why someone might be charged with murder versus manslaughter is how strong the intent was. There is something called an objective test, which is what would a reasonable person think. So in some parts of the world where juries decide, an objective test is applied, which is what would a reasonable person think that this person has done, and whether there was intent or not. And the key, if you call it the background or what would be considered is the relevance. So again, sort of in the world of law as well, this is something that plays a very big role. So whether it is murder or manslaughter, and many other situations like that. So any situation that you can think of. So here we have talked about belief driving relevance, relevance being the cornerstone, which is the fuel for ultimately how powerful the intent is, and the power of intent deciding how strong or whether it converts to action or not. Belief is something that needs to be nourished. That is something that needs to be it does go through a change as well. So the reason we have belief and relevance talking to each other, beliefs can be changed, as we talked about the last 1 year, based on what has happened in the pandemic. There is a lot of change that has happened in our beliefs, which has potentially changed the relevance, intent, and ultimately action. So that is what, my friends, is how intent converts to action. So be relevant, stay relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankur, for a fascinating talk on intent and relevance. I know we talked a little bit earlier, we're both parents, and this idea of how you create relevance for your children so that they will move to intent and then perhaps move to the action that perhaps you think is desirable for them. And I wonder if you just comment, because we talked about, we may be many things as parents, but undoubtedly we have experience, which children don't have. And this may have relevance in the teaching sphere, in the education sphere as well. So how does experience support or fit into this model? And is it possible sometimes we're just desperate to teach something or push something, and we should just back off, actually, because it's not relevant to that young person at that moment in time?
Absolutely brilliant question, Mark. Thanks for asking that. So I think what you said in terms of experience, I guess you're referring to our own experience versus kids' experience.
Well, either actually.
Either,
Yes, I was. You're right. I was referring to ours, but
So
you've made it a more interesting question yourself now.
No, that's
fantastic.
That's absolutely fine. And that is where, the reason we have that two-way arrow going between belief and relevance, and also relevance being informed by both belief and external environments, is relevance is not a static situation.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that changes all the time. So let me give you a marketing example, and then I'll come back to the children question. So in the world of marketing, something that is relevant today might not be relevant tomorrow. So, Kodak was very relevant 25 years ago. Where is it now? Blockbuster was very relevant at that time. Where is it now? And it is the organizations that understand how the relevance is changing, and they change themselves, that they are relevant to it, and then sort of they can develop the right intent and action. Similar sort of thing applies to kids as well. They go through changes. We have to, this is just my belief, you have to see how their relation to relevance is changing and how you can be relevant to them in that environment. So I might have, my son is now 15, he's doing his GCSEs this year. So maybe 5 years ago, I might have told him, Arnav, you need to do this. I can't do that now. Now the dialogue is, Arnav, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think about that? Because his sphere of relevance has changed. It is not only dependent on my experience. Now my experience needs to match with, because he is getting influenced by that external environment. So his relevance is changing all the time. So it is only when I can understand that and be relevant to him that I can help him develop an intent which I want.
That's interesting. Can I just quickly,
Please,
while we're on there, so what's very interesting, and we both obviously work in education, is that very often curriculums will determine what we deem as being relevant. Would you want to argue using this that curriculum should be more flexible, should be more junkable, if you like, as the people we work with, relevances and beliefs and therefore their intents change?
Absolutely brilliant, and very interesting that you asked this question, because I am actually having this dialogue with the Associate Dean of Learning, and we are talking about a concept called authentic learning, which he is quite passionate about, which is that if we have to be relevant to our students, we need to see what is happening in the outside world. Because I think at the moment, the way our curriculum changes, especially in dynamic subjects like marketing, there is so much change that is happening in the outside world, but the pace of our curriculum is not in sync with the change that is happening in the outside world. So how do we bring those concepts of authentic learning into the way we teach our students so that we are being relevant to them? They can see that this is something that is going to help me land a job, after I come out of this course. So it is only when we are relevant to them will there be intent, and sort of ultimately, we can get much better assignments from them.
And they can go and change the world, which is really what we'd like as well. Ankur, thank you so much for a wonderful, illuminating talk.
Thank you.
And some lovely ideas there for us to take away and share.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.